Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. So today I actually felt like I wanted to do an analysis video. Since I haven't done it in a long time, decided to do one. Hope you won't mind. It won't be a longer video, so don't worry about that. To do that, I decided to show one of the games that I like. And that is actually a game that was played in Linares in 1999 between the two players that don't really need no introduction, Veselin, Topalov and Vassily, Ivanchuk, two very strong players. And without further ado, let me just jump into the game. Nothing strange for Topalov. First move, knight to f3, and we have from Ivanchuk c5. So already an opening that I've played, I would say, a lot of times on one of the streams, and I kind of wanted to remind myself how can I actually play with black and maybe gain some advantage. Here we have c4, knight to c6, and with that said, I kind of give up the advantage on which side it is actually after the opening. So we have d4, pawn captures, knight captures on d4, e6. Okay, pretty standard stuff, and now g3 immediately. So the standard idea. When we play knight to f3, we usually play g3 with c4, controlling the d5 square, bishop to g2, castling kingside, and that is pretty much it. And okay, that's Topalov's idea. But we will quickly learn what actually Ivanchuk has in mind. He plays bishop to b4, gives a check, and usually people would play bishop to e7, play d6, and then you have a sort of a Sicilian setup. But here with bishop to b4 after knight to c3, already with queen to a5, we see that black is trying to do something on the queen side. Knight from d to b5, a very good defense. So a similar pattern we see in a Sveshnikov Sicilian, where the knight comes on b5, defends the knight on c3, at the same time attacks the d6 square. So those are the two threats that you have to keep in mind. Here knight to d6 gives a check. The king cannot castle anymore. You can grab the bishop on c8 and you can easily defend the knight on c3. So that is the threat that is kind of hanging in the air. And here d5 is played by Ivanchuk to avoid those threats entirely. a3 attacking the bishop, and now bishop captures to c3 immediately. And here we have a question. Do we want to actually capture with the knight on c3? That wasn't played in the game. Actually, pawn captured on c3, because there is this d4 move that is kind of here. To actually save the knight, you have to play b4, attack the queen, and after that you have knight captures on b4. So all of that is kind of problematic here for white. If you capture, the rook will fall, even though it is the best move here. And if you think about, if you move the knight, you can get a checkmate on c2 or on d3, so a double check from the queen and the knight. And if you don't move the knight, if you, for example, want to capture the pawn, then it's a terrible situation with knight forking the king, the queen, and the rook. So the situation isn't looking that good, and if you're playing a blitz game, I would definitely recommend something like this with black. But here, after pawn captures and queen captures on a1, there is this knight to b5, and it is considered that the best move here is knight to f6. So allow knight to c7, so giving up the exchange back. But that is a complicated variation that I really don't want to go into right now, because I just want to simply continue with the game. Here, instead of capturing with the knight, Topalov decided to capture with the pawn, which is considered to be a little bit of a better move. We have knight to f6, and here bishop to g2. So not going for knight to d6, but actually bishop to g2. Castles, and here is the critical moment in the game, where white could have also gone kingside castle, so put the king to safety, or actually do something else. What he did in the game here, queen to b3 was played by Topalov, and with that kind of allowed Ivanchuk to develop with ease. First starting with pawn captures on c4. So pawn captures, this is with tempo, queen has to capture, and now the queen is kind of tied to the defense of this knight. e5 is played, and now also this bishop that is usually considered weak in these variations all of a sudden becomes strong, with bishop to e6 also hanging in the air as a big threat. And now you have to really think about it. What can I do? Here knight to d6 was played, but if you go for the very obvious bishop to c6, you quickly realize that actually this move doesn't work. Pawn captures and queen captures, and there is no hidden like move that you can actually do to punish white immediately, but a simply silent rook to b8. You are making a threat of capturing the knight, and also at the same time bishop to b7, eyeing the queen and also the rook here. So what do you want to do? Do you want to defend the knight playing e4, bishop to b7? If you don't want to do that, then you simply lose a piece, and after that, the game. So capturing on c6 isn't an option. Of course, Topalov knows that, and he plays knight to d6. But here we have bishop to e6 developing with tempo. So not really bothered by knight to b7 or anything like that. But yeah, currently the queen is attacked and you have to move it. Queen to d3. e4, pawn sacrifice. So Ivanchuk feels that in the air he is currently very much in the lead considering the development, and he wants to sacrifice the pawn to gain even more activity. Knight captures, and here the queen cannot capture because the pawn falls and then you lose the rook. So bishop captures on e4 and we have rook to d8. So continuing with the development, so throwing everything out there, I've just given up a pawn. I'm also tempting white to grab another pawn and going simply for the attack. Here, if you go bishop to h7, king to h8, the question poses once again. The queen is attacked. When she moves, you can play g6, grab the bishop, and if you decide for all of these exchanges here, once again, queen c3 with check, pick up the rook, and queen can simply go back to g7. So keeping that in mind, maybe capturing on h7 wasn't a good idea, and yeah, definitely wasn't played in the game. Queen to c2, knight to d4. Everything works in Ivanchuk's favor. The pawn is pinned by the queen, you cannot capture it. Queen to b2. Still, the queen has to defend the pawn, otherwise you lose it, and maybe after that something more. And here, the killing move made by Ivanchuk here, knight captures on e2. Just a simply beautiful move that just simply puts a big stamp of Ivanchuk's signature on this game, not allowing the king to go kingside castle, keeping in the center, and just remembering that position from a couple of moves back, when actually you kind of think, do you want to go castle now at the same time as the king, as the black did, so going here kingside castle, or do you want to do something else? Topalov did something else, and in the end, pretty much all of these moves are kind of forced and lead to this here position where in the end, after knight to e2, you won't be able to simply go castle. Here, queen to b4 maybe could have been played, but already it's pretty much a lost game for white. Here you can even play knight to c3, because after queen to a5 you threaten rook to d1 checkmate. So you would have to play something like, I don't know, castles to put the king to safety, but after queen captures, pawn captures, knight captures on e4, that's a whole piece, and you can clearly realize that this is a winning game for black. So here in this situation, Topalov went for king captures on e2, and yeah, Ivanchuk simply continues with the onslaught. He plays rook to e8. So nothing drastic, so not playing bishop to c4, and quite with a simple reason, because king can go to f3, and after something like queen to h5, you can go, giving a check, you can go and play king to g2, and already the king is feeling much safer here on g2. While if you go for the same idea after rook to e8, so go king, I don't know, king to f3, queen h5, after king to g2, bishop to h3 is possible. You see the bishop isn't anymore on c4. So keeping the options available with the bishop in the center of the board, the rook on e8 where the king is a very, very nice move. Here we have queen to b4, so Topalov tries to exchange queens, but of course Ivanchuk is not having that. He is playing queen to h5 check, f3, and now f5. So don't want to capture, bishop c4, double check, coming with the queen, or even just capturing the bishop here on f5 would lead to a worse position for white. We see g4 played, but after that queen to h3, and we see that pretty much the end is coming near. Queen is coming to g2, both rooks are on d and e file. This bishop will move out of the way, and that is pretty much it. They played a couple of more moves, pawn captures on f5, bishop captures on f5, and here after queen c4 check, king to h8, we saw rook to e1, and after rook captures on e4 with check, it was in this position that Topalov resigned the game. And why did he resign? Well, yeah, quite simply, checkmate is following soon. You have two options here. You can, okay, not two options, but actually three options. You can go move the king, which doesn't make sense. So a check here and a checkmate here. Pretty much the same idea goes if you capture the rook with the pawn. So first bishop g4 check. If you have to go to f2, then queen h2 check. If you go to e3, then checkmate is here. And if you go to f1, then once again checkmate is on h3. So those are the options if you go like this. Otherwise, you can give up a queen, bishop captures, pawn captures, and here after queen to h2, you see that the material is even better on the black side, and at the same time the king is going to be checkmated pretty much very soon. So yeah, that is pretty much it. I saw this game a while ago. I quite enjoyed it, and since today I kind of felt that I would like to make an analysis video. Didn't make it in a long time. I think this is actually a pretty good game to show if you haven't seen it already. That being said, I don't really plan to make this a regular thing. Of course, I'm going to keep on streaming and stuff like that, so playing against engines like I usually do. But yeah, maybe from time to time I will also put in an analysis video as well. That being said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will definitely see you in the next one. Enjoy!